Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lauren Abbas, and I'm the Leader Speaks Series Coordinator. Our guest speaker tonight is Oskaloosa native and Forbes 30 Under 30 recipient Matthew Rooda. His presentation will be centered on his motivation to create the life-saving technology SmartGuard that's used to stop sows from crushing their piglets. SmartGuard is a product produced by SwineTech, which was founded by Rooda in 2015. Please join me in welcoming Matthew Rooda to William Penn University.
Thank you. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to William Penn for hosting the event and letting me come and talk about my story, and have the opportunity to thank those who helped me along the way. So to start off, I'd like to talk about Strength Finders. It's a test that I had to take while at the University of Iowa. What they do is they set you up with this test with a group of students, and they help you identify what are the top 5 strengths that you have out of a list of 34. And then the theory is you work in this class with other students to help you learn how to leverage your strengths against others people's strengths so that you can be a better team and be more productive. And I'm going to talk about this because this has a lot to do with my childhood, how I grew up, some difficulties I faced along the way, and how I could become, I guess, helped me do what I'm doing today. My strengths, from what the University of Iowa told me in this test, it says that I'm command. I like to have command. I like to take charge. I like to be in control. I have self-assurance. I'm self-assured. I'm very confident. If I think something is right, I am going to stick behind it, and I'm going to be very hard-headed. And I'm competitive, extremely competitive. Futuristic. I see the big picture, and I like things to be in a row. I like to arrange things. Now, there are things where these are called mature strengths, and you have your raw strengths. Your raw strengths are where the worst of you is coming out because of these things. And your mature ones are where, okay, now you're leveraging these things to be successful. So as a little kid, I was very naughty, all right? I would always get into trouble, and I thank my grandpa for carrying me around the farm and teaching me how to work with pigs, but half the time he was probably telling me no. And it was interesting because here I am, I'm very confident about what I'm doing, I'm very hard-headed, and just getting into a lot of trouble. But through this, I would try new things. I always like to push things to the limits. I mean, I was not the kid when someone said no, I'd stop. I'd wait till 2.5. And it kept getting me into trouble, but I kept finding better ways of doing things. I kept learning, kept finding different ways. And as I was going through school, high school, I was a bright student, but I wasn't the best student. Didn't finish in the top half of my class. I was always focused on how can I do things quickly, how can I be efficient, how can I work. School wasn't the priority. What could I do to get everything I needed to get done for school as fast as possible so that I could get by? And this isn't the right mindset to have. This is the way it was for me. And it wasn't until I got to college where that flipped, where I said, this is serious, this is what I'm going to start doing now, and I'm going to go. I started being competitive within myself, and things started to really change. But when I was a kid, it was all about the fun, pushing things to the limits, doing things that you weren't supposed to do, starting little companies here and there, whether that was selling my parents' food on the school bus or contracting vaccinations with local pork producers. It wasn't that anymore. It had been to a point where now I had been told for so long that you got to do what's safe, you got to do what people think is right, and that's what you need to do. So when that light switch flipped, I realized, okay, I'm good at biology, I'm good at math, I'm good at all these things. Why not become a doctor? Why not become an obstetrician? I'd worked on a pig farm. I like delivering babies. I went and shadowed a doctor. I'm like, okay, this isn't a whole lot different. This seems like something I could do. And so I started doing this, and while I was in school, a buddy of mine, Abraham Espinoza, and we met at this thing called Phi Theta Kappa. It's this honor society for good students, and we started talking. And Abraham was a little different, all right? He was from Mexico. He dressed in designer clothing. I was always in a Hawkeye t-shirt, grew up on a farm. We didn't connect very well, but at the same time, there was something about it where we learned so much from each other. And together, we founded a STEM organization in inner-city Waterloo where we taught kids the importance of an education, importance of entrepreneurship. And it got to a point where we were teaching them what it meant to go outside of your limits and to do something new, to where we looked in the mirror and realized, why aren't we doing the same thing? There's so many opportunities that we have, why aren't we taking advantage of them? While I was at Hawkeye Community College studying for pre-medicine, I had an opportunity to work as a farm manager and a farrowing manager at Schneider Pork Farms. And there, the reason I was there was because I talked to the medical acceptance committee or whatever, and they said, you know what, there's so many students right now who are doing the nurse's aid, the medical aid, they're doing research, they're shadowing doctors. We are looking for something different. And I said, is raising a bunch of pigs and delivering a bunch of babies and administering medications and all that different? And they said, yeah, it's very different. That's exactly what we're looking for. That's what we want to see. So that encouraged me to go back onto the farm where I would start doing this again versus going into a clinic. And while I was on the farm, I realized that success dictates passion versus passion dictating success. I had so much fun figuring out how we can make things better on the farm. How could we eradicate disease or other things that are causing us problems, and to hit those next metrics to help not only the piglets and the sows' lives be better, but also the business be better. And that became my passion. I enjoyed taking things and making them better. And while I was at the farm, I realized that there was this huge problem where piglets were getting killed because mother sows would lay down and roll over on their babies. And then when I started looking into it, I found that a lot of people were facing this problem. So you're going to watch a baby piglet die, and so you can see the problem. It's not going to die, but it gets out. So that's essentially what happens. That's why we have farrowing crates today, so that we can allow the mom to take a little bit more time to lay down to give the piglets a chance to get out. And in a farm like that, those piglets, or any farm, those piglets will get laid on and crushed and suffocate and die. And it's a worldwide problem. On some farms, it's as big of a problem as 77% of the baby pigs will die because they are crushed. Or baby pigs that die will die because they're being crushed. So it's a serious problem. And then we started looking into it, and I started realizing that on our farm and on other people's farms, the trend was that they were dying early on in their life, within the first 4 days. And then after that, it's really not that big of an issue. Did a little bit more research and found that globally, this is costing pork producers billions of dollars. It's leading to the waste of over 22.5 billion pounds of pork, and over 80 million piglets globally are estimated to die from this problem. There's a huge opportunity here. And as I was thinking about this, I'm power washing, and as a lot of farmers know, when you're power washing, you're kind of solving the world's problems because there's nothing better to do. I don't know how many good fantasy football trades I kind of drafted up while power washing in a farm. And while doing that, I started coming up with newer ways to make this better. And most of them were really, really bad. But the premise of it was, why can't we teach mom pigs not to crush their babies? You can teach a pig so many different things, why not that? So we came up with this idea, or I came up with this idea of, okay, what if you had this little robotic pig that would go into a pen and it would condition the mom through sound, trying to do some things. Awful, awful idea. Awful, awful, awful idea. We still laugh about it today, but regardless, I had this idea. I went to an info session thing where I talked to my dad, and not throw him under the bus, but he's like, oh yeah, we could try something different. We need to figure out a way to solve this problem. Maybe it's a good idea. It wasn't. He was being very supportive, which I appreciate. But as we looked into it, and started talking to people at Iowa, we found out that Iowa had this thing where they invited about 100 different students with really cool ideas to come talk about them, and if they thought it seemed like a really good idea, they'd give you money, and in this case, they'd give you $1,500. And I went to this info session about it and found that all the other kids in the group had awful ideas, but maybe that was just the competitive side of me. And I'm like, I can do this. So I called up my buddy, Abraham Espinoza from Hawkeye Community College, and I said, okay, we need to talk. And he's like, what did you break? And no, I didn't break anything. I just got to talk to you. I have a really good idea. And together, he drew up this one mock draft. We put a few pieces of paper on a table, and we ended up winning the fair. And we were shocked. We're like, okay, this was not near as elaborate as everybody else who'd been doing their things for a couple of years. And it encouraged us to kind of take that next step. All right, well, what else can we do? And sure enough, the University of Iowa standing right there, we've got this platform where we put students through a summer-long internship program where you work on your idea, and the premise of it is you got to validate that it's not only a problem, but that consumers want it, that you can find partners, you can figure out what your distribution model is going to be, everything that you can do to kind of try to create that business plan. So we did that program with a bunch of different students. Actually, Dalton Shaw talked about 2 weeks ago, and his business partner today was actually in this program with us as well. And we learned an awful lot. I didn't realize how much I didn't know about business and how elaborate it can be. And while we were in this program, we went and did customer discovery, is what they call it. So we talked to farmers from all over the world and found out that it was a global problem. So I was like, you need to talk to 100 customers, and you need to validate that this is a problem. In the back of my head, I'm knowing this is a serious problem, but I will do it. I will go out and talk to 100 customers, and to our luck, 15 days into the program, they had the World Pork Expo. So this is a really easy opportunity for me to go out there and just talk to a whole bunch of customers with a questionnaire. What's your biggest problem? What's it costing you? Would you buy another product? And sure enough, we found that a vast majority, 92% of people were actually facing this problem and said that they would actually pay for something if they could fix it. Now, of course, what they don't tell you is, okay, how much is that going to cost? But they would pay for something. We also found that any other competitors out there who are trying to solve this problem were no good. How we looked at it was we'd ask our potential customers, have you used anything to solve this problem in the past? And a lot of people had tried another product that used air to blow under the mom. And in theory, when she stand up, you have the breeze. The piglets don't like the breeze, so they will run away. And when the mom lays down, the breeze shuts off, and the piglets go back to nursing. Great concept. However, veterinarians told us that it didn't work because the breeze would create drafts, which would create disease, and you'd really kind of offset your savings. We also found that one of the individuals he talked to had 12 in his attic, and that was pretty good validation for us that we could keep moving forward and that there was opportunity. We then talked to veterinarians about what do you think about this kind of pig idea, this thing that walks in a pen, or these little piglets or with balls or whatever, this awful idea. And they're like, that's an awful idea. Why don't you try doing something where it's more like a baby monitor and a Fitbit? Like, that's a really good idea. There's a lot of opportunity with that. Now, this was prior to the whole innovation, smart homes, about a year before all that. So this was pretty new. And we're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we went with that. And sure enough, we got to the end of our little program at the University of Iowa and won most viable business out of the group and had a lot of good ideas of what we could do going forward. I mean, how are we going to pair this with going to school? How are we going to make all that work? It's very time intensive. We were probably putting in 40 hours a week, so just full time, we'll work in part time. How can we do that while going to school? Well, just after this, we had a guy show up and he's like, hey, we want you to be a part of our program. We give $20,000 to 10 select companies, and it gives you the opportunity to go through our 90-day platform where you can even further validate your idea with capital. But the kicker is you got to drop out of school. You got to drop out of school for a semester, and you have 2 days to make your decision. So this was right around the time of 4th of July, so I'm home with family and really trying to figure out what's the right decision to make. It was very difficult and ruined the whole weekend. It was the worst 4th of July ever because you just can't make up your mind as to what you want to do. And then I'm sitting in church on that Sunday, and the pastor says, God only puts place or opportunities in your life when you're ready for them. And it hit. That was exactly what I was going through. This was my opportunity that God was giving me because I was ready for it. I had done all the work, and I was ready to do it. So we went through the program, and another 10 teams. We were probably 8 years younger than the next oldest person. So we were pretty young going through this program. And we learned so much. What they would do is they'd hook you up with 3 mentors every day that you would meet with to try to figure out, okay, is this somebody that can help you move the ball, get further, kind of improve what you're doing? And through that, we met a guy named Mark Reimer, and he helped us design products on a 3D printer. We bought a 3D printer, and we were putting out probably 10 revisions a week because we could iterate so fast, and over 100 easily over the course of the 90 days. And they were really bad. We kept figuring out that what we were using was bulky, wasn't very good. I mean, the thing on the mom, how do you put something on a pig? We tried it. We tried a collar, we tried a lot of different things, and pigs destroy stuff. So how could you do that? This was kind of mocking after something they used for breeding, but it didn't really work. It broke a bunch of times, so we're like, that doesn't work. What can we do? All right, so I'll go to this one. So we looked at it, we're like, okay, we can go with a belt. So we have this Brett Favre copper fit belt that my grandma sewed together so that we could put it on a pig. And it worked. It got the mom up off it stayed on the pig. It did everything it was supposed to. But if you had a really lazy pig, you couldn't get it up to put the belt on. So we were like, this doesn't work because no farmer's going to stand there for 5 minutes or do everything they have to do to get every pig on their farm up to put this belt on. It's going to take way too much time. So then we realized, well, what about an adhesive patch? So let's get a medical adhesive, try a few things, and see if we can just peel in place right on the mom. It worked, kind of. The adhesive patches we had only lasted like a day. So we talked to 3M, and we get all these different adhesives. We talked to all these other companies. Eventually, I had to go to China to figure out what adhesives do you have over there. And sure enough, we found one. There's only one adhesive. I can guarantee you one adhesive that's known to man, at least that's verbally published, that works on a pig. And it works really well. It'll stay on there for 6 to 8 days, and in some cases 8 days, but typically 6. And for our product, since that problem only lasts the first 4, it only has to be on the mom for 4 days. This is going to work. Now, how do we provide a monitor that's going to work just as good? So we spent a whole Saturday going to Dollar Tree here in Oskaloosa to find a bowl, and then drilled a hole, put a microphone, and boxed with some waste product from a farm, and we got what we had on the left, and it was awful. But it was a step. And then we got our 3D printer, and sure enough, had a design that allowed us to put a microphone in there, allowed us to go out and validate that we can identify when a piglet's dying. But how do we identify it? What we do is we have a monitor that sits in the pen, the baby monitor, that listens to all of the squeals. These squeals. So each squeal is vastly different. If you have a pig that's fighting for food versus a pig that's dying, you can see on a digital analyzer what's going on. Whereas you sometimes can hear it, but not always can you hear it. Not always can you tell the difference between a pig that's fighting for food and a pig that is getting crushed. So we realized we can identify when it's happening. Now how can we identify where it's happening? There's literally dozens of litters in a room that are squealing at the same time. So we started looking into newer technologies and realized that we could allow all the devices to talk to one another to allow us to pinpoint exactly where this was occurring. And then we realized, okay, well, what if it's occurring but something else happening? And we found other ways to use technology and sensors to reduce false positives to where now we can identify when it's happening, where it's happening, and get the mom up. But that was the next hard part. How do you get the mom up? So we looked at vibration, and that didn't really do anything. They didn't really care. And then we looked at, okay, well, what if you have a dog collar or a training collar for a dog? That was too strong. Then we realized, okay, well, what about stuff that chiropractors use? I mean, a chiropractor uses a TENS unit to treat nerve and muscle pain. So we tried that, and it was perfect. Now, there was a setting hard. I've been buzzed more times than what I could probably count. But we figured out what was perfect, where you could alert the mom of the vibration, then alert her 5 seconds later if she doesn't stand up, to the point where she will sit up or gently stand up. And if she doesn't gently stand up or sit up, you try again. And if that doesn't work, you alert the farmer, telling them, this mom, there's something wrong, or she's just stubborn. And that was great. So now we figured out, okay, we can actually keep a patch on a pig, and we can tell the mom to stand up. So we were going through that whole process, and here's an example of a pig on the left is dying. The device identifies it. The mom stands up. The piglet runs free. That was kind of our first version where we thought we made it. Nuh-uh. We weren't even close. We were so far away from making it, it's not even funny. That was probably a year and a half ago, and we're finally doing well today. So it was a false hope early on, and that's something that we learned early on, was that there's so many ups and downs in an entrepreneurial journey. It just goes, it's crazy. You never know what's going to happen next. Shortly after we validated this, we went and talked to a few animal welfare specialists, and we're told that this should never be allowed in a farm. All right, we had just dropped out of college, spent 8 months of our lives, and now this should never be allowed on a mom. We probably should have talked to those people first. Or should we have? took that information and went and talked to a well-known veterinarian in the industry and asked him, what do we do? And he said, nobody has ever done this with a mom on a pig, has ever tested to see if this is bad for behavior, bad for production. And the worries of the animal welfare specialists were, what if this reduces lactation? What if this affects production? What if this causes her to be so stressed that she can't raise her babies? So we did something different. We went out and we paid some money to go to Kansas State University and run some trials. And there we found that we could, in fact, help a mom stand up off of her baby and induce no physiological stress and affect 0 production parameters, while also saving half of the pigs from getting crushed. And that's where we are today. We are able to identify and save pigs about half the time, giving these producers the savings that they need to make it feasible for them to buy our product, but also what the mom and the piglets need is to survive. So we went back to producers and we kind of figured out, okay, what is the next thing that we can do now that we're saving pigs? How can we make this better? And the consensus was, all right, we can give feedback on what is the health and the behavior. What is the piglet movement patterns? What is the mom movement patterns? And everything else that goes into the data that's going on in these farms that no other product ever has recorded. And we realized that we can be the Fitbit for pigs. We can go out there and do all these things that nobody else has done on pigs, and then provide producers with a dashboard that tells them, okay, how many pigs are we saving, which sows has the poor temperature, which heat lamps are going bad, and things that can, it's a tool for them to make a bigger impact. So as a company, we decided we were going to target the biggest producers. You got the biggest impact. It's the ones that are facing the problem the most, and they're already used to using very advanced levels of technology. And talk to them. And at this point, we're probably early 2016. We're getting a lot of traction, a lot of good publicity. There's a lot of great things going on. Very positive. Got awarded the Entrepreneur of the Year from Iowa. We went on and we won Prometheus Award for Student Entrepreneur in the state. And then we went on to win Entrepreneur of the Year from Farm Bureau and National Student Entrepreneur from another organization. Things were just going really well. And then we also went to Under Armour, and then they gave us a bunch of money. So it was very interesting how over the course of a month there was so much positive that you almost get disconnected from reality. You're getting told by so many people so many times that what you're doing is so great that you get disconnected from what you're actually doing and how things are actually going. So we leave this and we go back, and nothing was what we were hoping for. We were going through so many problems. All of a sudden, the tech was breaking. Things were not working. It was just becoming a failure. And that was hard because all of a sudden, now you're facing all these problems where you thought you were at a whole different place. So we went out and solved those problems, went out and talked to some investors to figure out how can we continue to fund this going forward, and then eventually got the funds that we needed to go and hire a team. And along that way, the National Inventors Hall of Fame reached out and said, we want to showcase your product in our facility, that now that it's manufactured, there's a lot of cool things we can see coming from this, and that was really cool. And then Forbes came and talked to Abraham and I, and that was really cool as well. But we had become a lot better at celebrating the wins. It was no longer something that we wanted to focus on. It was cool, let's go. We were focused on the big picture, the vision of things, which is where I think sometimes we lose our focus. It's where, when we're kids, everybody asks, what do you want to do? Versus how do you want to live? And they don't ask, what is your vision for your life? What do you want to accomplish someday? Versus asking you all the little things that you want to do along the way. And the moment that we started to look at our company, instead of taking it as a win-by-win approach to this is the big picture, this is what we're going to accomplish, this is what we want to do. We want to be the premier tech that's located in a fairwing crate that gives the industry metrics they've never seen before. It changed everything. No longer were the downs so down. No longer did we allow the ups to be so high up. We were able to kind of channel our emotions in a way that made us more successful. To the point where when we got the Forbes thing, we celebrated, maybe we were happy for like 5 minutes then we actually had to have our friends tell us, you should probably do something to celebrate this. And we're like, okay. So we went out and we celebrated with Dalton and Eric, and it was a good time. But now it was on to the next stage. We had raised money, and now it's time to build a team. It's no longer about us. It's about the investors who put their time and money in. It's about the producers who are now going to be using our product. There's a lot more at stake than just us. And it was a huge time of growing up. We went and brought on a couple engineers to our team and got an office space where we were able to work together. We got a little bit cramped, but it was cool. We actually had a place of our own. And as we started to grow, we started to tackle more problems as a team, collectively go and succeed. And it was really, really cool. Abraham here, he was up to his neck in inventory. He was learning. He was drinking from a fire hose. He grew up in a family of manufacturing and operations experts, but he had never really done this before, so he was learning as we went. And then we started to get a lot of traction. A lot of producers out there were calling us, and we were able to get some sales and see a potential growth perspective for us over the next 5 years. Companies out of Tennessee that we're working with that have a huge potential for us as a company to go out and get more sales within them, and just the word of mouth within the industry is so great that once one person said they liked it and one person said they wanted to try it, everybody else just seemed to go after it as well. And it's kind of interesting as how that was going. I have this picture. It's a little bit off, a huge change in pace, but this is the movie Babe. All right, you know the pig that, all the sheep and things. So I like to consider this as like the movie that describes like an entrepreneur. When you're growing up, you are given an expectation. I mean, we're all products of our expectations, in my opinion. And your expectation is kind of what you follow. And Babe's point, he was a pig. He's expected to get eaten. He's expected to follow that path of his life, right? And the moment he decides he wants to be a sheep pig, which is really stupid and really weird, everybody laughs, right? Although that for him, with that, he was able to become more successful than any other animal that was meant to do that role. I think if we looked at ourselves in this really screwed up way, I use this just because there's a pig, but just because it's not down what our expected path is, when we move and change from that path, people are going to think it's funny. People are going to think it's the wrong thing to do. You are going to get a lot of people who say you should not do that, you can't do that, it's the wrong thing to do that. But when you push through that and can find a way to make it happen and turn those challenges into a passion, into a fuel that ignites you moving forward, you can really make a huge difference and become more than what you ever thought could be possible. And that's where I'd like to end it right now. It's humbling, standing in front of so many people who have been advisors, mentors, people I've looked up to my whole life, and just in a position at 24 where didn't think this was actually a possible thing. So thank you guys for letting me come talk. I want to thank my parents for supporting me this whole time. It's meant a whole lot. I really appreciate it. So thank you. Thanks, Mom and Dad. So I'd like to open up for questions. I try to kind of focus more on the story, little things I usually don't talk about. Sure, there are a lot of things out there. So she'll be coming around with a microphone.
I don't need a mic. I have a loud voice.
Okay.
Are you thinking about applying this technology to other livestock? Because I know Fitbit for swine, right? Getting that kind of data, producers of any kind of livestock would appreciate having that data. So is that a next step?
It's a possibility. However, there's so many people right now operating in the beef cattle and the dairy cattle space with tracking those metrics. And right now, the reason why it's feasible for us to go out and do that stuff in the swine industry is because we have a platform technology that's solving a real need. Right now, it's not cost effective for most people to go and throw a health tracking tool into the pork industry because it's going to cost way too much. So that's kind of our advantage. Where we're really focused on is going vertically within the industry. How can we collect more information, add more value in other ways within that farrowing process, within automating processes within the farrowing part of the industry that can add value.
How did you end up, being associated with SwineTech, or SwineTech, your company itself, and how did you end up in Ames with the model and producing it?
All right, so we didn't end up in Ames. We were in Iowa City. No, we weren't in Ames. We were in Iowa City. So I'm proud Hawkeye.
Well, I know, but I saw in, I don't know if it was in the Iowa Farmer Today or Farm Bureau, but they said you were based out of Ames.
Oh, I'll have to go give him a hard time.
And that's an article I read, because I've kind of followed you.
We're looking at opening an extension office in Ames. Ames has been very helpful. They have an ag startup engine there where people from Harris Vaccines and from a whole bunch of other companies up there have been helpful in giving their time and supporting us. So we'll most likely be moving an extension office out there probably in the next few months. But to that point, right now we're in Cedar Rapids and Iowa City.
So what is your manufacturing model?
Yeah, so manufacturing, we do it all in the state of Iowa, or most of it in the state of Iowa. All our plastic and electronics, our assembly, our manufacturing is all done in Iowa, whereas we have to go get our textiles from Vietnam, but we're working through a company in Perry, Iowa to go do that. There's not a whole lot of textile manufacturing here in the U.S., especially whether or not it's cost effective or not.
So what size is the electronics?
So the electronics, so for the monitor, they don't have to be very small, just because we have for detecting the squeal, we kind of have to have a bigger device. But for the wearable, it's deck of cards is where we have it down to right now. It can get a little smaller, about half of that, but right now, a deck of cards. First question was,
Well, how did you ever end up with SwineTech?
so we actually didn't want to be at SwineTech. We were at SwineGuard, which was actually a good thing this happened, but we got a cease and desist. I reached out to a company in August, and I'm like, hey, you have the same name for your product for this like flea repellent for pigs. I don't see how this is very relevant to what we're doing. Do you mind if we use the name as well? And they're like, we'll get back to you in a couple weeks, and nobody did. And they're like, if you don't hear from us, don't worry about it. I just don't think that they thought this would actually take off, because about 3 months later, we were 3 pages on Google, and then all of a sudden their product was on the 4th page, and we got a cease and desist. So we started looking around and realized that nobody had trademarked or registered SwineTech. And that allowed us the opportunity to do so many things within the swine industry and within the pork industry with technology that we thought it was a good fit. We just had to make sure that we could use the search engine optimization tools to get around all of the job postings, because technically someone who works in the pork industry can be called a swine technician. So getting around that wasn't too bad, but yeah, we didn't mean to be at SwineTech, but I'm glad we're there. Questions? Any other things you'd like me to focus on, or we're good? Yes.
So these devices that stick to the pigs, they fall off after 6 to 8 days?
So a producer will actually install it, and then after 3 to 4 days, we'll go in, take the patch off, and then wash everything and move it on to the next room. And so in cases, they'll fall off at 3, but typically they'll be on, and the producer can go and move them. Yep. Yes.
How much do they cost?
So one unit costs about $1,300 and oversees about 140 to 160 litters a year, which allows, that's why we have a move it, just so it can cover our costs, we can get some good margins, and then the payback is in a year, since they can get it on that many litters. Yeah. Yes.
How much work have you guys done locally? Like, have you worked with any local producers or local farm bureau to push your product?
Yeah, so we worked with a local producer that was very helpful in allowing us to go in whenever we wanted to go test things, which isn't typical because of biosecurity. I also work with the local farm bureau. Adam Cuppus out of there, he's their investment manager, and he's been very helpful. We remember going through that 90-day program, and he was one of our advisors. And we actually had a kid on our team that had nightmares because he was so rigorous on his financial questions. It was hilarious. He woke up the next morning, he's like, guys, you won't believe this, but I had a nightmare yesterday about Adam yelling at me about my finances. So they were not easy on you. You had to go through a lot of that stuff, but it was a lot of fun. But yeah, Farm Bureau has been extremely helpful. I can't even say how many people have been helpful. It's incredible how when you're doing something like this, the opportunity to outside resources just expands exponentially. You can honestly contact probably the majority of business owners, regardless of the size of the company, globally, and get them to reach back to offer you advice. It's incredibly cool to see how warming and helpful everybody else is when you're working on something like this. Yeah, that might even just be a key takeaway. I personally believe that there's nobody who's not, if you contact somebody and you have a legit reason why you want to talk to them, more likely than not, they're going to offer their help. They're going to offer their advice, and you're going to be able to move ahead in that. And I'm a big believer that regardless of whether you're in business or any other aspect of your life, having mentors is extremely important. Having someone that's been there, done that can help you along the way. This case maybe more than others, but in life, you're drinking from a fire hose. You're learning new things every single day. How can you have someone guide you along the way? It's been a huge learning thing for us, and actually a culture thing we brought into the company where all employees who come on board, we hook them up with an external mentor that can help them become better at their role, because a lot of these people have never been in a situation where they're leading engineers in a tech company where they're technically the CTO or where someone's technically the COO where they've led operations. So how can we be constant learners and also develop ourselves to be better people? Yes?
You mentioned 2 veterinarians that helped you with this. Where are they associated with? Are they in Iowa or Iowa State?
Yeah, so after that experience, we actually went out and we said, okay, it's probably a good idea for us to reach out to as many animal welfare specialists and veterinarians as we could. And we have not found a single one outside that hasn't been helpful. They've all been really helpful. The one that helped us was from Minnesota, and actually founded PigChamp, MetaFarms, big companies within the industry. He's a very well-respected veterinarian and entrepreneur, and he's been a great asset for us moving forward. He's become a good friend, great mentor as well. All right. Give you 5 seconds. Yes? Oh, that's a good question. All right, so it goes right here, right? So half of it's kind of on the hairy spot, and half of it's on the bald underline, and it's a really good combination of grip for the bomb. Now, in regards to what do we use to communicate, we use a technology called Zigbee, which is a lot like BLE, Bluetooth. It's a Wi-Fi, or it's a mesh product that allows us to do some false positive reduction. It's awful for what we're using it for. So this is one of those things where just because somebody says it's the right thing doesn't always mean it is, even if they're experienced as like 30 years of experience. Zigbee is what everybody uses to automate their homes, and had a lot of great expectations in how this could be used in a big business like setting. It's not designed for that. So we've been beating our head against the wall probably the last year with this thing. We finally got it to the point where it's working really good, but every company we talked to that's tried this in the past has given up and gone to something else. So that was probably one of the bigger things we faced was, okay, how do we make this work? I guess another, on the light of challenges, another challenge we faced was when we manufactured, or when we had our prototype working and saving pigs, doing everything that way it was supposed to. We had that device and we raised money on it and told everybody else it was working. It was. We went through manufacturing, and for some reason, a 1/8 of an inch was changed by the microphone, which created a resonance chamber within the mic hole, which caused all of our algorithms to not work. And that was about 2 months of troubleshooting to figure out why doesn't our product work when it did in a much crappier encasing. And we fixed that, but it's another thing. We joke, we celebrate when we have fixed a problem, but we know one's coming right after it. So how do you keep that mentality of competing, everything's a competition. How can you compete against the problem? And we have a very competitive environment, so it works really well for us.
And in that light, what's the current challenge that you're working through today?
So current challenge for us, so we solved the problem with the wireless connectivity, but we had to take a whole lot of functionality, a whole lot of the cool things we were doing out of the product to try to get that working again. And so now we're throwing stuff back in, and it's going really well, but who knows when that's not going to go well. So it's kind of, right now we're in a very good spot, but we'll see what happens. And since we're in that constant testing, getting new sales out there, customer support, what things are going to happen that you don't know are going to happen. So just kind of doing as much as we can to be prepared, but it's the roller coaster that it's the best and worst thing you'll ever encounter. It is so much fun, but it'll drive you insane.
So is your product able to be upgraded? So if I purchased it this year, next year, you're adding more functionality, can you go in and do that to the equipment I purchased?
Yes, we can. We're able to add a whole lot of stuff. That's all of our hardware right now has a lot of that health tracking stuff built in. So we just have to kind of go in there and update the software. What it looks like we're going to be doing over the next year is some slight redesigns in regards to assembly and how do we do those things. How do we make our wireless network that much better and allow us to do those things. We're also looking into ways to use machine learning and look at things and other metrics in the farm. Yep. So our working with the larger farms has been kind of nice because they've been very helpful in helping us figure out what do they want versus what's not important. Yes?
Are you living the way you want to live?
I am. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm very happy. It's a good time. And the nice thing is I get to see my family a lot. You wouldn't think that, but I do. I get to see my family a lot. And that's also a big part of our culture. Also, we gave everybody 10 days off right around Christmas because I see it as a really nice time where you can go spend time with family and really connect with people who are not in Iowa. And that was something our team appreciated. But it's that work-life balance. How can you offer that? And somehow we're doing it while people are working their butts off. So it's a good thing. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I get to travel too. I realize Iowa, traveling a lot is nice, but there's no better place to come back to than quiet Iowa. It's like you're out in New York City and you're just like, get me the heck out of here. New York City is not my thing, that's for sure. People probably think I'm crazy for saying that. They're like, Iowa, you got me joking. No, so I was got to travel to Germany and Spain and do a lot of cool stuff over there and speaking and it's nice to come back and just it's quiet. And there's a lot less distractions. That's kind of nice too, because if I was in Miami or a big city, there's a lot of other things you can be doing than working. And Iowa helps you keep focused because, okay, unless it's the weekend, you're not really going to be doing a whole lot. So it's good to keep you focused. All right, well, thank you guys all for coming. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this was interesting. And if you want to talk to me after, you're more than welcome to. So thank you.